In the distant land of Tandria, a civil war has deposed the cruel king. Zoe, an ambitious princess from a neighboring kingdom, sees this as her chance to seize honor and glory. But first, she'll have to prove herself worthy of wearing the people's crown. The Settler 7, Paths to a Kingdom, is a strategy and management game. Your goal is to build your kingdom over a series of missions. In each one, you'll start out with a small village that you must grow into a thriving metropolis and overcome all dangers along the way. To succeed, you'll need to build buildings, harvest resources, research technologies and trade for other goods, and eventually fight your neighbors for control of neighboring territories. So right away, Settler 7 is a bit different from previous games in the series. Unlike the previous games where you controlled a large amount of villagers and built a large amount of buildings on a very large map, Settler 7 streamlines it down to you controlling single territories and building individual buildings that get upgraded depending upon your needs. Now, at the start of each mission, you'll have your castle, your warehouse, some supplies, and a territory that has a few basic resources. Now, you can only build structures and harvest resources in territories that you own, so very quickly, you'll need to expand your holdings, either with troops or with trade. Now, when it comes to construction, instead of simply having every building available to you, core buildings are grouped together under common themes. For instance, houses and forest huts are basic buildings that can be put anywhere on the map. If there's wood nearby, you can upgrade your hut with a lumberjack who will then go and chop down trees. If there's a river with fish, you can upgrade it with a fisherman who will go and collect food for you. Essentially, all your resource and production buildings are tied to core buildings, which then receive upgrades depending upon what you need. So later on, when you're developing farming and you're milling wheat into flour, you'll need to build an expansion off of a house that is a bakery so that you can turn that flour into bread. After a building is constructed, supply lines are set up automatically and workers will transfer goods where they're needed. Eventually, when you have enough resources and prestige, which is basically a measure of how impressive your territories are, you'll be able to construct unique buildings such as churches and barracks. These unique buildings are necessary for producing actual units such as soldiers or priests, which you will then use in your strategy to accumulate victory points. Now, victory points are one of the game's other new features and probably one of its best features as well. Essentially, to win any given scenario, you need to accumulate enough victory points by accomplishing a variety of objectives. Now, some of these victory points can be gained by, just good old-fashioned conquering your opponents and gaining the most territories, but others are related to research or trade, or even simply having the most impressive buildings in your territories. That's one of the best things about this system, is that virtually any strategy is feasible. In fact, if you focus exclusively on one, it'll actually be harder because your enemy will just scoot past you and scoop up all the points in a different area. Now, if I had to complain about Settler 7, I would say that the game has some odd quirks, things that are almost balance issues, but not quite. For instance, one thing is that a territory that has defensive fortifications can only be attacked by ranged units, such as riflemen or cannons. Even if there are no walls, the defensive fortifications can only be attacked with long-range units. I mean, your infantrymen will just stand there and watch the battle unfold, and it's kind of odd. Another thing is, even though I mentioned you don't have to focus on military in order to win, the other victory points, such as the trade and research victory points, can be very fickle. In order to trade, you need access to trade routes. So if your opponent conquers all the territories that have trade routes, you get cut out of that entirely, and you'll have to eventually take over one yourself in order to get that back. Also, research is, for some reason, exclusive. What that means is that When you research something on the research tree, it becomes locked to your kingdom, and nobody else can get it and nobody else can research it. So if you or your opponent are quick on the research tree, you can completely shut the other person out and prevent them from getting any research bonuses, which can be a brutal long-term strategy. All in all, I would give Settlers 7 Paths to a Kingdom 2 out of 4 stars. It's kind of a departure for the series, but it's still a fairly competent management strategy hybrid. I would probably recommend this game to anybody who's a newcomer to the genre. It's got a very streamlined design and it's got a very slight learning curve, so you can get into it really easily. If you're a fan of the regular Settlers series, this is going to be a maybe. The same will go for anybody who likes just regular strategy games. This is good, but not as complex or as challenging as you might hope. All right. Thanks for listening. And you know what? You have a nice day. See ya.